take a deep breath, and let's hear a story about Kael, the white wolf who journeyed through endless snow to find the heart of winter and save his frozen forest home. The crystalline silence of the eternal winter forest was broken only by the soft padding of paws on freshly fallen snow. Kael, a majestic white wolf with eyes the color of twilight skies, moved like a ghost among the frosted pines. His breath formed delicate clouds that dissolved into the crisp air, joining the gentle dance of snowflakes descending from above. Unlike the other wolves who found strength in numbers, Kael had always preferred solitude, finding peace in the quiet whispers of the wind through bare branches. The ancient forest had been his home for as long as he could remember, a pristine wilderness where time seemed to stand still beneath the eternal blanket of snow. When he rested his head upon his paws at night, he could feel the heartbeat of the earth beneath him, slow and steady like a lullaby. The stars above twinkled with knowing light, as if sharing secrets with those patient enough to listen. Sometimes Kael would lie awake for hours, his fur warmed by the soft glow of moonlight filtering through the trees. Other wolves spoke of warmer lands beyond the mountains, places where grass grew green and water flowed freely without the grip of ice. But Kael loved the way the snow cushioned his steps and how the cold air filled his lungs with invigorating clarity. He relished the sound of ice crystals tinkling like tiny bells when disturbed by a gentle breeze. The endless white landscape was not a barren wasteland to him, but a canvas of possibility painted with subtle hues of blue and silver. In the heart of the forest stood an ancient oak tree, impossibly massive and somehow eternally alive despite the freezing temperatures. Its gnarled branches reached skyward like arms seeking embrace, and its roots plunged deep into the frozen earth. This place was Kael's sanctuary, where he would curl up in a hollow at the base of the trunk, surrounded by the comforting scent of aged bark and winter roses. Here, protected from the harshest winds, he would dream of adventures beyond his familiar territory. Not far from the ancient oak lived the forest's wisest inhabitant, an old raven named Skora, whose feathers gleamed with midnight iridescence even in her advanced years. Skora had befriended Kael when he was just a pup, separated from his pack during a fierce blizzard. She had guided him to shelter and shared stories of ancient times when the forest was young. Her kindness had touched something deep within the young wolf's heart, teaching him that friendship could exist beyond the boundaries of species. Other creatures dwelled in the eternal winter forest as well, swift Arctic foxes with clever eyes, stoic moose with antlers like winter branches, and shy snowshoe hares whose coats matched the landscape. Though Kael kept his distance, he watched over them with a protective spirit. The gentle harmony of the forest brought him contentment as each creature played its part in the delicate balance of their shared home. When danger threatened, it was often Kael's warning howl that echoed through the trees. At the edge of Kael's territory lay a frozen lake so vast that its opposite shore remained hidden in mist. The ice was thick and clear as glass, revealing glimpses of slumbering fish suspended in the waters below. In the early mornings, when the first light of dawn painted the sky in pastel pinks and golds, Kael would carefully walk across the lake. The sensation of gliding across the smooth surface filled him with childlike joy, his paws tingling pleasantly with each step. As peaceful as life was in the frozen forest, ancient legends spoke of a time when the seasons would change, when flowers would bloom and leaves would grow. The eldest animals passed down stories of dancing butterflies and singing birds, creatures Kael had never seen. Such tales seemed like fantasies to the young wolf, who knew only the constancy of snow and ice. Yet something in those stories resonated within him, like a half-remembered dream calling from the depths of ancestral memory. The wolves who shared the vast territory respected Kael for his strength and wisdom despite his preference for solitude. When their paths crossed during hunts, they would acknowledge each other with dignified nods before continuing on their separate ways. There was an unspoken understanding among them. Some wolves were meant to run with the pack, while others were destined to walk alone. Neither path was considered better, merely different expressions of the wolf's nature. Among the pack wolves was Luna, a graceful female with fur the color of stormy clouds and amber eyes that seemed to hold the warmth of summer. She alone would sometimes seek Kael's company, sitting with him in comfortable silence as they watched the aurora borealis paint the night sky with ribbons of ghostly light. During these quiet moments, Kael felt a rare sense of connection, a warmth that had nothing to do with physical heat. Luna never pressed him to join the pack, understanding his need for solitude. The rhythm of life in the eternal winter had continued unchanged for generations, each day blending seamlessly into the next in a peaceful, if monotonous, existence. Kael had come to find deep satisfaction in this predictable cycle, in knowing exactly what each new dawn would bring. The consistent cadence of hunting, resting, and exploring had a meditative quality that soothed his wild spirit. In this unchanging world, he had found a measure of inner peace that many creatures spend lifetimes seeking. But as with all things in nature, change was inevitable, arriving first as a subtle shift in the air currents that caressed Kael's sensitive whiskers. The familiar scents of pine and frost were now tinged with something foreign, a heaviness that spoke of impending transformation. The stars seemed to shine with unusual intensity, as if trying to communicate an urgent message. Even the ancient oak tree creaked more frequently, its wooden voice groaning with what sounded almost like worry. It was Skora who brought the first clear warning, landing on a branch near Kael's resting place, her obsidian feathers ruffled by an unusually strong wind. "The balance is shifting," she croaked, her wise old eyes reflecting the troubled sky. "A great storm approaches, unlike any our forest has known in living memory." The heart of winter stirs from its slumber, and soon all we know may be buried beneath snow too deep for life to endure. As these words settled into Kael's consciousness, a distant rumble of thunder echoed from beyond the mountains, confirming the raven's ominous prediction. The days that followed Skora's warning were filled with an eerie stillness, as if the forest itself was holding its breath in anticipation. Kael observed subtle changes that others might have missed, how the snowflakes fell with increasing urgency, no longer dancing but driving toward the earth. The temperature dropped noticeably, making the air sharp enough to sting his lungs with each breath. Even the most cold-adapted creatures began seeking deeper shelter, instinctively preparing for something beyond ordinary winter hardship. Deep in the night, Kael was awakened by an unfamiliar sound, a low, rhythmic pulsing that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath his paws. He placed his ear against the frozen earth and was startled to feel a distinct vibration, like the heartbeat of some massive, slumbering creature. The sensation sent a shiver through his body that had nothing to do with the cold. Something ancient was stirring, something powerful enough to affect the very foundations of their world. When the storm finally arrived, it came with unexpected ferocity, descending upon the forest like a living entity intent on burying everything beneath its frigid wrath. Winds howled with voices that seemed almost sentient, carrying snow so thick it obscured the difference between earth and sky. Kael fought his way through the blinding whiteness to the ancient oak, where he found other animals already gathered, seeking refuge in the only shelter strong enough to withstand the tempest's fury. Luna arrived shortly after, leading several younger wolves who would have surely perished in the storm without guidance. Her fur was caked with ice, but her amber eyes still burned with determined fire. "The pack's den has collapsed," she explained, her voice barely audible above the wind. "Many are trapped, and we don't have the strength to free them." The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Kael's shoulders as he realized that his solitary existence had not prepared him for the role of protector that fate now thrust upon him. That night, as the storm raged without mercy, Skora shared an ancient legend with the gathered animals, her raspy voice weaving images of hope in the darkness. Beyond the crystal peaks lies the heart of winter, a place where the first snowflake ever formed still beats with primal magic. It is said that one who is pure of intention may approach the heart and make a single request that cannot be denied. The old raven fixed her knowing gaze on Kael. "Perhaps what we need now is not strength to endure this winter, but the courage to ask for its mercy." Morning brought no relief, only the realization that the snow had already buried the lower branches of the ancient oak. At this rate, even their sanctuary would disappear beneath the relentless white tide within days. The trapped pack wolves would have even less time before their air ran out. After a moment of silent contemplation, Kael made his decision, announcing it with quiet determination. "I will find this heart of winter and ask it to spare our home." Despite protests from Luna and warnings from Skora about the perilous journey, Kael's mind was set. He had lived his life in comfortable solitude, taking from the forest without giving much in return. Now was his chance to repay the debt he owed to this land that had sheltered him. As the others helped prepare what meager supplies they could, a pouch of pine nuts for energy, herbs for healing wrapped in a leaf, Kael felt a strange new sensation warming his chest. Purpose. The farewell was brief, for time was precious, and emotions threatened to weaken his resolve. Luna pressed her muzzle against his in a gesture of unexpected tenderness. "Return to us," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "The forest needs its guardian." Skora offered one final piece of advice. "Follow the North Star beyond the crystal peaks, but beware the hollow men who hunt rare creatures for their collections. Your white coat is both blessing and curse in this journey." Stepping out into the storm was like entering another world, one where familiar landmarks disappeared beneath the swirling chaos of white. Kael kept his head low against the driving snow, using his sensitive whiskers to detect changes in the wind that might indicate obstacles ahead. Each step required tremendous effort, his paws sinking deep into fresh powder that sometimes reached his chest. The physical struggle, however, was easier to bear than the weight of knowing lives depended on his success. By nightfall, Kael had reached the foothills of the Crystal Peaks, massive mountains whose surfaces glinted like polished diamonds in the rare moments when moonlight broke through the clouds. The storm seemed slightly less intense here, allowing him to catch his breath in the shelter of an overhanging rock. As he licked ice from between his paw pads, he became aware of soft footfalls approaching through the snow. His muscles tensed, ready for confrontation. From the swirling white emerged a small figure that Kael initially mistook for a fox, but as it drew closer, he recognized a creature he had only heard described in Skora's tales, a snow leopard cub, its spotted white coat almost invisible against the landscape. The young cat regarded him with curious blue eyes that held no fear. "You're going to the heart, aren't you?" the cub asked in a voice like tinkling ice. "I've been waiting for someone brave enough to make the journey. My name is Sira, and I know the way." Kael's initial impulse was to send the cub back to safety, but something in Sira's confident gaze suggested she possessed knowledge vital to his quest. How does one so young know of such ancient secrets? He questioned, sniffing the air cautiously for signs of an adult leopard nearby. Sira's response was simple yet mysterious. "The mountains speak to those who listen. I was born in a cave near the heart's chamber, where the walls whisper stories older than time. I can guide you there, but we must hurry. The hollow men have sensed the heart's stirring too." As dawn broke on the second day, the unlikely pair began their ascent of the Crystal Peaks, following a narrow path that wound between towering ice formations shaped like frozen flames. Syrah moved with surprising grace for one so young, her small paws finding secure purchase on treacherous surfaces. She taught Kael to test each step before committing his weight, to listen for the subtle cracking sounds that might warn of unstable ground. The wolf found himself gaining respect for his diminutive guide with each passing hour. Midway up the mountain, they encountered their first real danger, a section of path completely blocked by a recent avalanche. The only way forward was through a narrow ice cave whose crystalline walls pulsed with an eerie blue light. "The cave breathes with the heart's rhythm," Syrah explained, her whiskers twitching nervously. "We must move quickly and quietly. The vibrations of loud noises can cause the ceiling to collapse." As if to emphasize her warning, a distant rumble sent a shower of ice crystals raining down upon them. Inside the cave, time seemed to lose meaning as Kael and Syrah navigated a labyrinth of ice tunnels that curved and branched in seemingly random patterns. The air grew noticeably warmer the deeper they traveled, causing rivulets of meltwater to trickle along the floor. Strangely beautiful ice formations hung from the ceiling, delicate spires that resembled frozen waterfalls caught in mid-descent. The gentle tinkling sound they made when brushed against created a soothing melody that eased the tension in Kael's weary muscles. After what felt like hours, the tunnel widened into a vast chamber whose ceiling rose so high it disappeared into darkness. At the center stood a perfect circle of ice, transparent as the clearest spring water, within which pulsed a softly glowing blue light. Each pulse sent ripples of aurora-like color washing across the chamber walls, accompanied by that same heartbeat sound Kael had felt through the forest floor. "The heart of winter," Syrah whispered reverently, her blue eyes wide with wonder. "We've found it." As they approached the sacred circle, a sudden commotion at the chamber entrance froze them in place. Harsh voices and the clatter of metal equipment echoed through the tunnels. "Hollow men," Syrah hissed, her small body tensing with fear. "They've tracked us." Acting on instinct, Kael nudged the leopard cub toward a crevice in the wall. "Hide there and don't make a sound," he commanded gently. "I'll lead them away from the heart." Before Syrah could protest, the wolf bounded toward the entrance, deliberately leaving clear tracks in the opposite direction. The chase that followed pushed Kael to his physical limits as he led the hollow men humans wrapped in thick furs, wielding strange devices through a series of increasingly treacherous passages. His white coat, which had always been his pride, now served as perfect camouflage against the icy backdrop. When he had led them far enough from the heart's chamber, Kael employed a trick he had used while hunting Debling, back through a parallel tunnel and slipping past his pursuers unnoticed in the confusion of echoing sounds. Upon returning to the heart's chamber, he found Syrah waiting anxiously by the glowing circle. "They'll find their way back eventually," Kael panted, still catching his breath. "We must act quickly." Following Sira's guidance, he stepped carefully into the circle of ice, feeling immediately enveloped in a gentle warmth that penetrated to his bones. The blue light intensified, pulsing in time with his own heartbeat now. A profound sense of peace washed over him, clearing his mind of all distractions. In that moment of perfect clarity, Kael understood that the heart was not just listening, but communicating in its own way, showing him visions of the forest as it once was in perfect balance, with winter holding appropriate dominion without overwhelming all life. He saw how the ancient cycle had been disrupted, not by malice, but by subtle shifts in the world's greater patterns. With humility rather than demand, Kael formed his request in his mind: "Restore the balance that brings harmony to our home." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The blue light expanded until it filled the entire chamber, wrapping around both wolf and leopard cub in a cocoon of gentle energy. Kael felt a connection to every snowflake, every frozen lake, every creature that called the Winterlands home. Through this connection came understanding that the storm was not an act of destruction, but an attempt to rebalance forces that had grown dangerously askew. The heart showed him how to guide this correction without the devastation that would otherwise occur. As the light gradually receded, Kael was filled with new purpose and knowledge. The heart had given him not just the power to save his home, but the wisdom to maintain its balance in the future. Sira nuzzled against his leg, her eyes reflecting the fading blue glow. "You are changed," she observed simply. "The heart has chosen you as its voice." Before Kael could respond, the sound of approaching hollow men echoed once more through the tunnels, closer this time and filled with determined anger. Their escape from the crystal peaks became a blur of danger and narrow survival, with Kael carrying Sira on his back through passages that seemed to shift and change around them. The hollow men pursued relentlessly, their strange weapons sending shards of ice flying dangerously close. Yet whenever the path seemed lost, a subtle pulse of blue light would guide them toward safety, the heart's influence protecting its chosen emissaries. Eventually they emerged onto the mountainside to find the storm had paused, as if holding its breath in anticipation. Descending the mountain proved faster than their ascent, with newly fallen snow cushioning their path like a soft blanket. As they traveled, Kael noticed subtle changes in himself. His senses seemed sharper, his connection to the elements more profound. He could feel the presence of every creature in their vicinity, from the smallest snow mouse to a distant herd of caribou. When night fell, he found he could see the North Star with perfect clarity, despite clouds that should have obscured it completely. When they finally reached the forest's edge 3 days later, they were met by Luna, who had been standing vigil despite the continuing danger. "The snow has stopped falling," she reported, her amber eyes wide with hope and something more as she regarded Kael's transformed presence. "But many are still trapped, and the snow is too deep for us to reach them." Kael nodded understanding and closed his eyes, focusing on the new awareness flowing through him. He could feel the buried wolves, their life forces still strong but fading as precious air diminished. With Sira and Luna watching in awe, Kael raised his muzzle to the sky and released a howl unlike any before, a sound that carried the resonance of the heart itself, deep and powerful, yet gentle as falling snow. The sound rippled outward in visible waves of blue energy that caused the excessive snow to shift and settle, compacting itself without melting entirely. Paths appeared as if drawn by an invisible paw, leading directly to where help was most needed. The ancient oak stood revealed once more, its branches shaking free their heavy burden. The days that followed were filled with joyful reunion as the forest's inhabitants emerged from their various shelters to find their world transformed, but not destroyed. The snow remained, as it should, in their eternal winter home, but now existed in harmony with life rather than threatening to extinguish it. Plants that had lain dormant for generations began to peek through in protected spaces, adding touches of green to the white landscape. The frozen lake partially thawed at its center, creating a gathering place where creatures could drink freely. Kael, once the solitary wolf, found himself at the center of a new community forming around the ancient oak tree. His white coat now bore subtle markings of luminous blue that glowed softly in the darkness, a visible sign of his connection to the heart. Sira decided to stay in the forest rather than return to the mountains, appointed by unspoken agreement as Kael's apprentice in maintaining the delicate balance. The young leopard's playful energy brought laughter to places that had known only solemn silence for too long. On a perfect evening, when the stars shone with exceptional clarity, Luna found Kael sitting alone on a hillside overlooking their flourishing home. Without words, she settled beside him, her warm presence a comfortable companion to his thoughts. "Do you miss your solitude?" she asked eventually, her voice carrying no judgment, only genuine curiosity. Kael considered the question, watching the gentle rise and fall of life in the valley below, wolves hunting together, foxes playing in newly formed snowdrifts, even Skora teaching young ravens to find food beneath the transformed landscape. "I thought solitude was my nature," he replied softly, the wisdom of the heart evident in his voice. "Now I understand it was merely preparation for this moment, learning to listen deeply, to observe without distraction, to value the delicate balance of all things." As he spoke, aurora lights began to dance across the sky, reflecting the blue markings on his fur in brilliant display. Luna leaned gently against his side, and together they watched night embrace their winter home, now a place of beauty and harmony rather than just survival. In the peaceful silence between them grew the quiet understanding that true happiness comes not from isolation or attachment, but from finding one's rightful place in the greater pattern of life.